Thank you. Hey everybody, can you hear me? All right. My name is Matt and I'm an alcoholic. Hey family. My home group is Wake Up Group in Nashville, Tennessee. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. We'd love to have you. If you're in the area, come by, and we have fresh coffee on, and I have a sponsor, and I also have the privilege of working with some other fellows and passing on what was so freely given to me. And my sobriety date's May 1st of 2008. And all three of those, sponsor, home group, sponsees, and sobriety date are all optional. But I really love the ones that I have, and I don't plan to change them anytime soon. Strongly suggested. First, before I get rolling here, I want to thank Chris for the introduction, for being a great hostess, and Patty picked me up from Sacramento Airport yesterday, and we had a great time driving up 5, and thank Curtis wherever you went, and for inviting me, and in the committee. There you are. For the committee for having me. This is really just, it's an honor and it's a privilege anytime I get asked to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous, let alone travel across the country and hang out with these beautiful people in California. And I mean, if the grass wasn't green, I would have thought that this would be Southern hospitality. I just really love the energy that you guys have here in Redding, and it really is. It's awesome to be here. It's also awesome to be able to share my story, because my whole life up to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, people were telling my story for me. My parents had a version of my story, and each one probably a different. The judges had different versions of my story. And my attorney had a version of the story that I was to agree with, and to just paid him to tell my story, and it took a lot of pain and a lot of destruction and a final surrender to the idea that I couldn't run the show anymore, and I wasn't going to be able to get myself out of this one. And that admission of complete weakness, I find out that in that, you guys have given me strength to tell my own story. And what a gift. What a freedom that is. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous so that I could tell my story, though. That wasn't part of the deal. I didn't come here with any hopes or promises of coming to California with it. And I didn't, to be honest with you, as we'll discover, I didn't really... I didn't really come here for any other reason besides it was the last stop on the block, and it was the last thing that I could possibly try, and to get started, I have to go back, because I have to tell you that my memories of childhood were. On the outside, everything was there. I mean, we had a good childhood. As far as I can remember, we weren't lacking for much of attention or care. And but my earliest memory was around 5, and my dad traveled a lot. We moved around quite a bit when I was younger, but we finally settled in North Carolina, and I remember being awake at night in my bed and just crying, because my dad, he traveled for business, but he was dead in my mind. It was just like a speaker last night put it so well, like the thought came to me, and all of a sudden it was a reality, and I was then living it, and I would just cry and cry and cry. I mean, like, my dad's dead, he's never coming back, blah, 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 and he would always come back. I mean, but for whatever reason, I was living in fear from a very early age. Several years ago, my mom actually told me that I came up to her one time when I was even younger than 5 and looked at her, as a 3-year-old would look at a mom and say, you know what, I know I'm adopted, and I need to know where my real family are, And she just looks at me and is like, sorry, but this is it, and I've done the research since, and they are who they say they are, and but there was something mentally that was setting me apart from even those who were the closest to me that I had at that point in time, and still to this day, and this mental issue, or phenomenon that I had, it was with me well before I took my first drink, and that came along 12 years later and after being born. And I remember this day just like it was yesterday. My buddy and I, we found his mom's stash of Smirnoff above the laundry machine, and the fact that we found it makes me think that we were looking for it for a while, right? And I remember that night, and we found it, and we were just, success. And we did what you're supposed to do. We got that, and we poured off into some little water bottles, and then splashed some orange juice on top of that. And don't know where we learned that recipe, but we must have been paying attention, and ran off into the woods, because that's what we did when we were younger. We, it wasn't nothing in the summer to just go out and whatever, hike through the woods. And that night, I opened up my bottle. We each had one, and I threw it back there. And the second that it hit my throat, I thought that we had gotten rubbing alcohol, and I was about to asphyxiate and possibly die. But then 2 seconds after that, that thing happens, and from the head down to my toe, I was just washed with the water of the next dimension, and I had arrived. And I mean, I found my solution right there at 12 years old, and I'd figured that as long as I could be like this, everything was okay. Because all of those fears, all of those insecurities, all of those things that I was carrying with me on my shoulders up to that point in time were gone. And I was laying there in the leaves and next to this tree, just like, this is it. And I drank the rest of that, and some of my friends too, and because I needed to help him finish, and we couldn't have any evidence, and I'm a nice guy, and I wanted so bad to recreate that night. But as you could imagine, at 12, my resources were limited, and we only had this 1/2 gallon to pour off of, and pretty soon, his mom would find out about it, and then, our sole resource would be depleted. We'd have to go on the hunt again. But we were smart, we found different caches of booze. My family had one. They kept their vodka in the freezer, and I found out soon that you can't put water back in it and then in the freezer. Yeah, it's hard to lie about that. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, well. And, so that's how it went. I stole my very first drink, and I would steal my very last one, and a lot in between. And it wouldn't matter. I was the only person, this is only affecting me. That same summer, I was introduced to some other stuff that was passed around a circle, and I never laughed so hard in my whole life, and this was great. I love the effects produced by alcohol. And I love the way that I feel when I'm not me, like I'm not here right now. Always had that difficulty. And so that drink would just let me escape. It would let me check out. And I would later develop a love for traveling once while drinking. And that was very, that's a whole nother talk, but just the places that, you wake up and, it's scary, and it's scary when you wake up passed out in a car when, you get the, oh yeah, what was I doing? I was driving and you don't know, I've had to play detective a lot in my day and just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together really quick. This was before CSI or any of those other shows, but you're looking around looking for a road sign or a landmark or something like, where was I going? That's a good question, officer. I don't know. I'm just here, taking a nap. It's not normal behavior for 17-year-olds to. As I was growing up, I had a natural gift for sports. Still very athletic, can pick up, a racket after not playing tennis for several years and still be okay. But I had really taken a liking to soccer, and that was my sport. And I had not only had this natural talent, but I'd also started to train and had special coaches, and I was really good. And at one point, around 15, maybe 16, I had interest from Division I schools that were saying, stay on this path and you'll have a full ride. And it was looking good. And I enjoyed playing soccer. But there was also that thing that happened to me when I was 12 years old in the woods. And it would be from that point until, I stopped playing soccer, of course, because, but I was always trying to figure out how I could do both. How I could play competitive soccer, but also be a very competitive and professional alcoholic. And even though I wouldn't have said that I was an alcoholic at this time, because, what's an alcoholic? Well, I'll tell you what my idea of an alcoholic was. That was my grandfather, who would go to the bar, come home, and just, pull the kids and everybody out of the bed and beat the living daylights out of them for no apparent reason. That's an alcoholic. And I'm not an alcoholic. I drink so that I can chill. I drink so that I don't have to beat the crap out of people. And I can't be an alcoholic. So at age around 12 or so, actually, I remember, it didn't take me too long to start getting into some type of trouble, and this was reflected in school. And I don't know what happened, but apparently, I ended up in a psychologist or a psychiatrist, one of those. My first experience, and I remember this guy, after just talking to me for a little bit, and I wasn't even 100% honest with him because you can't be 100% with these people. He's like, yeah. He said to my mom and I, after we got back together, he said, your son's just going to continue to drink and do what he wants to do because that's the only way he feels normal. And I said, man, I don't know who this guy is, but I love him, that was permission, right? That's what I heard. I don't know about you heard, but I heard he's going to go and you can't do anything about it. And so I used that card for a while. But it was really difficult to play, competitive sports and drink competitively as well, because with me, I would stay first of all, they play most of their games on the weekend, and that's obviously the only, my window in the beginning. And I wasn't able to drink and play at the same time. I actually got caught doing that, and they didn't favor this too much in my school. But I had crossed over that line and didn't know it at the time, where I didn't have the choice. And it's a pretty defining moment in my life, because here I was, I had this great opportunity, but yet it no longer had the the effect. It wasn't, there was more for me in that next drink than there was in a full ride scholarship to a school. I mean, that makes sense to me. And so I go on, and I got into some trouble. My first run-in with the law, drinking related, I was 17. My parents, during this time when I was doing really well, was soccer, and they got me a new car. And I got this car, and it's a 2-door coupe, and I have 5 people in it, and we're leaving the pre-party, going to the party, and I'm just gunning it, and I'm listening to the engine purr, and got the windows down, and all of a sudden the stop sign came up a little bit too fast, and I'm flying up over this embankment, coming crashing down, and airbags deployed, smoke, all this stuff, and I'll tell you where my mind was. It was run. But I couldn't get out of the door because the thing was, bent in. And so I did what any person in North Carolina would do, and that's hop out the window like a NASCAR driver and start running down the street. Well, I'm in rural back roads here, and it was really dark. So I got about 25 feet down the street. Couldn't see my hand in front of my face, so I stopped. I turned back and looked around, and I saw my car and the smoke and everything. I didn't think about the 4 people that were riding with me. It's not about, it's always about me. It can't be about them. But I did turn back. By the grace of God, nobody was seriously hurt. And just so happened that another friend was riding with a station wagon with nobody in it. I guess it wasn't as cool as the car I was in. But it sure was at that point in time, because we hopped in there and we went to the party. Well, this was before cell phones, so I had to use the landline at the house we were going to, the party, and I called home, because that's what I do when I get in trouble. I don't know about you, but I said, Mom, you wouldn't believe what happened. Somebody stole my car. Seemed reasonable to me, and unfortunately, she said, I don't think so. The police are here, and we know what happened. She said, you need to be back there at the accident. We're coming. I was like, oh, man. So, obviously I had to put a couple more back and get ready for this experience. And had some friends drive me up there, meet with the officer, 2 officers actually, and they said, son, have you had anything to drink tonight? And just without even skipping a beat, no, officer, I will be honest, I had one after the accident, but I had nothing up to the... He said, son, that's a good answer. And I said, I know it is. I don't know where I came up with that. Man, that was good, and we rolled with it. And there was no way that they could prove otherwise, right? And so I got, I didn't get a DUI that night. I just got some other traffic charges, and on we go. A couple months later, I had the opportunity to go out to a private club with some older friends, and this would be my first time drinking in an establishment. And so I was on, and I borrowed my parents' car. Don't know if they knew I was taking it, but I took it. Went out, and I remember I had a nice shirt on, It's like I already knew what I was going to order well before I even got to the bar, and I go up, Makers and Ginger, boom, right after the first one, going into the second one, I noticed that there was these 2 blondes, and probably around 23 years old, which was really old at the time, and I had just enough courage to go up and tell them where I'd been the last 23 years of their life, and they were laughing too, and I don't know if it... But I started laughing, and we were all laughing. We were having a good time, and so that's what happened. We left, went back with them, hung out for a while, and then early in the morning, we needed to keep the party started, so we had to drive. And of course, I had the car, so I was driving. And this is the first time I had another experience where I saw a flashlight in the side mirror at a stoplight, and I thought it was seeing things at first, but sure enough, there was an officer approaching the window, and he told me that something that my driver's ed teacher didn't tell me, and that is that you can actually get pulled over going under the speed limit. And that's what I was doing. And so I got pulled over, and they determined pretty quickly that I shouldn't be driving this car. And I spent my first night in jail. But I do what I do when I get into trouble, and I call home. Well, now it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. My dad picks up the phone. Hey, so here's what happened. I'm in jail. I was wondering if you could come pick me up. He's like, I'm sleeping. I'll think about it in the morning. Click. I determined that I did not like jail. Right there. That was not a cool place. And not very comfortable. Did not have any much thread on their thread counts on their sheets or anything like that. It was not the plush lifestyle that I was accustomed to or so desperately seeking. But I got home and I just said, well, this driving thing, is probably going to stop. And well, after you'd had that spree, and within a 2-month period, the state did their job and took my license away. But I just thought that it was just a situation that I had to navigate around, and so that's what I did. And I just continued to do what I was going to do. But as a result of this DUI, I had to go get one of these assessments. And I don't know if they still do them anymore, but it's where you go and it's almost like taking the SAT or something like that for partying, and they ask you a million questions and try to catch you in lies. But remember, I'm smart, so I'm gonna pass the test. And I had this the guy sat across from me, gave me 1,000 questions, and I failed the test apparently, or passed it depending on whose team you're on. But the guy says, you know what, you're gonna have to go to the A&A. And I was like, the A&A? What the heck are you talking about? And hey, man, no way. That's but okay, whatever. I'll do whatever I have to do to get you off my back. I mean, anything. I'm really good at blending in and telling you the right answers. And hey, I mean, I'll go to an AA meeting. So at 17 years old, I had my first experience with Alcoholics Anonymous, and to the best of my recollection, I went in to this church basement and opened the door, and all of a sudden, a big poof of smoke came out, and I'm walking in. I'm kind of wondering if I should call the fire truck or something, because they're chugging some cigarettes, and I'm a little apprehensive, but I walk through, and I hear people, and they're laughing, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden, through the smoke, I see this really nice old lady, and I'm like, wow, hey, and there's another really nice old man, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, man, these are like this is like the Tales from the Crypt or something like that. Like, this is man, like that. Gosh, like, it's grandma and grandpa are in here, Thank God you guys made it. We were really hoping, but I mean, really old. I mean, like, this might have been for like the first 100 or something, like a couple of them, and it was, oh man, I couldn't wait for that meeting to be over, and I was like, guys, thanks a lot, and they're like, yeah, keep coming back, and I was like, yeah, we'll see you in about 50 years, you just hang in there, and take your medicines and stay off the road, please. No, but seriously, that was my first experience with Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was no way that I was like them. I mean, alcoholics, again, belligerent, drunk, my mind, and they're violent, they're living under bridges, drinking out of brown paper bags. I drink Grey Goose, and I just have driving issues. And so that was that. And I said, thanks for the information, and I went on my way and tried to do it different. And I moved. I think I got into some more trouble, and as a result of, and as a alternative to going to jail or going inpatient somewhere, I had the opportunity to move to the mountains. See, at this time I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, it's in the center of the state, and they said, hey, 3 hours west. My dad was living out there as he had a new job opportunity for small period of time, and so I went out to live with him. And I don't know what I was expecting to find out there, but I'll tell you what I did find. I found that they were doing exactly what I was doing back home, but it was just better quality, everything. And I was introduced to moonshine, and that rocked my world, and it's a much more economical way to get loaded. I also found that you could gift it to people, give them pints and quarts or what have you, and they wouldn't drink it, so it would always be there for you when you got there. I thought that was pretty smart. But they, I would get what I was I would find what I was looking for, and I always did. And I hadn't finished high school at this point. I'm still. I had to drop out of public school. I'd been to a couple different schools, but I dropped out of my most recent public school, and I'm taking classes online to try to get a high school diploma. And I'm just, you know what? Everything's okay though, because I'm making money now. I mean, there's nothing that I can't put some money on and make everything a little bit better. Just get you off my back, because at least if the outside is looking okay, you don't understand that I'm dying inside, and there's just not enough poison that I can ingest that's going to make the pain go away. But I keep going, and I'm traveling around the U.S. I'm going on doing some really fun things, getting to stay in New York for a weekend or stay a whole week, go for the weekend, stay for a week type of thing. And this is life, right? This is what I thought that, I want, was freedom. I was able to do anything I wanted to do. And at around 19, I'm still living, and I'm in the mountains. A buddy of mine is, we're sharing a place, and we're longboarding, long skateboards in the summertime in the mountains, and snowboarding in the winter, and living the life. And this one night, I'd had a couple, one maybe two. I wasn't drunk by any means, but I had enough to try a ride that I hadn't tried before, and I'm going down, and again, right through a stop sign. And I try to do a power slide at the bottom of the hill to stop, and that wasn't effective. And I hit head to concrete going about 10 miles an hour, no helmet. I'm dead on arrival, 19 years old, and they ship me off to hospital and perform, life-saving intervention where I had to remove part of my skull to let my brain swell, and it wasn't looking good for the home team. Have no idea what that was like for my parents. But I'll tell you what happened when I was discharged. Miraculously, the brain did some things that science can't prove. It can't not explain. And my buddy picked me up from the rehab hospital after I had to learn how to walk and talk and put my shoes on the right feet and all of this stuff. Passed me one of these medicinal cigarettes that wasn't quite medicinal yet in that state, and a flask of some Jim Beam, and I was right back to it, like without even skipping a beat. Because look, guys, as we know, this isn't my problem. This is my solution to life. I don't know how to live without it, and at this point, I still didn't know that this was what was going on, and I tell you that story, one, is because I think it's another place as I look back where I see, the hand of God all throughout that, and in spite of anything I was doing. But also, I tell you that because to this very day, I have never once even thought about stepping on a skateboard. Like, never. I mean, I just see a skateboard, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to, no thanks. I'm what the book would call a problem skateboarder. With sufficient evidence, I don't have to skate again. I'm cool with it too. You know what? I found other things to do. I'm okay. I like my feet firmly planted on the ground, head in the clouds. But I'm here, and alcohol was whooping my butt left and right, and I had no choice but to get back on. See, I didn't know that when I was out there. And so I go on, and I continue to do what I'm doing, and now I have these high-powered pain medications to do it with, and I'm not having to drink as much. And I'm feeling like I'm doing pretty good, doing nothing. And I have this other survivor's guilt and some other stuff that I don't even know how to process it. So I just want to go to oblivion. And I'd blacked out several times before then, but this became the status quo of my drinking, was to go into oblivion. And I'm talking about time machine stuff, and coming to and in the middle of conversations or in different places and trying to find where, put the pieces of the puzzle together. I tried to move. I tried to change what I'm putting, went from whiskey to cognac to moonshine to different, to the all beer diet, and just none of that stuff was working. Carl Jung describes it so well and said, that when he was talking to Bill, that, we alcoholics suffer from a thirst, spiritual thirst, and instead of spiritus, which would be, a deity or a god, I find spirits, at the local ABC store. And so here it is, I've been thirsty my whole life. I'm like spiritually dehydrated from day zero. And I just started to drink the first thing that I got my hands on. And it was working until it didn't work anymore. So at this point, I'm having a hard time with life, and it's starting to not look good. The stuff on the outside is starting to deteriorate and to start to go away. And my last-ditch effort to fix it, or at least I thought, I just got a girlfriend. That's what I thought was the right thing to do. Well, I'll tell you where I was at with things. This young lady just got out of prison, and I was attracted to her because I felt like I could trust her, okay? Makes sense. She was living on the dark side like me, and at this time I'm living in one of those motels that you pay, for the week, and it's in this it's under a different name, and I'm on the line of insanity and death, to be honest, and I'm running out of resources, and so we started taking things first from those closest to us, and I remember when I stole from my parents, there was something inside of me that broke, that was just so disgraceful, and I felt so much guilt that stealing from you or anybody else after that was just totally justified. It's like, if you're going to steal from those people who let you in after you just burn your life to the ground, then, what's a bonded company or somebody else, And this was my logic. I don't necessarily condone stealing things, period. So that's what happened. And like I told you, I stole my first drink, and I would steal my last. And that wasn't the plan, though. The plan was to get to Mexico. See, along the period of time, from the time I met her until what I pray is my last drink, I started finding myself in places I couldn't get out of a lot. Sometimes voluntarily. I'd found that when the law's looking for you, you can check yourself into the hospital and, detox for a few days. They can't tell them that you're there. So that's what I did. And I get to see people like you come in, and the reason why I'm here today is because a man came to a jail. He was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He came with a book just like this, and we had a meeting. It would take a lot of ins and outs of jails. That doesn't do it for me. Because like I said, I can be separated from alcohol. Okay, everything's, not okay, but everything's, fine, whatever. I'm not drinking, but as soon as I get back out, all those plans that I had, everything that I had said that I'd never do again, was out the window. I get a new plan all of a sudden. Plan change. It's really good at changing plans. And the way that I was brought in was after a spree, about 3 week spree. I'm coming home going back to my parents' house. I was living in a '94 Buick with my love, and I wasn't homeless by any means. We would sleep wherever we wanted to in the Buick, and it was a small car, and we were going. I was going up to say goodbye to my mom, my dog, and grab a change of clothes and leave the state, because I knew that we had done too much to ever live in this state again. And that morning, I woke up and dialed in. They had one of those little gates, and you had to dial in. My mom hadn't heard from me in who knows how many weeks, and she was glad to hear me. Opened the gates and drove up this mountain hill, and as we get around this corner here, there's an undercover sitting at the bottom of the hill. So I just, play it cool, and I keep driving, and he gets his gun, and I know, oh, this isn't a normal traffic stop, and he asks, what are you doing, or where have you been? Oh, I just ran down to the store, and by that time he was telling me to get out of the car, I guess, once he realized who I was. We were armed and dangerous. Well, we were wanted, armed and dangerous, and pulled me out of the car, put me in the back of his. Within 2 minutes, there was a dog in my car. It wasn't my dog, and this whole row of this little mountain neighborhood was filed back to back with undercovers and agents of different government. And then here comes my mom, because she by this time is wondering where am I? And I see her talk with one of the agents, and the look that was on her face when she's driving by and sees me in the back of the car was the same look that I saw from a mother who was burying her son from this disease not too many years after that. It was just despair and sadness and hurt. And there was something inside of me that I didn't know I still had, a little feeling or something, and I just cried out at that moment after seeing that and just said, God, please help me. I can't live like this anymore. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. And pretty much right after that prayer, I get this memory of those people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I get a memory of you. And I said, all right, if that's it, I'm ready. Let's do it. And I'd love to tell you that I got out on bail that day and got to my home group and, been an active participant ever since, but that didn't happen. It wasn't, but I did find a little bit of peace that day. That's May 1st, 2008. And it wasn't, I'm going to wake up and not drink today. My plan that day was to say goodbye to my mom and my dog, get a pair of clothes, and get gone. Continue to run, because that's what I do best. But I was rescued and taken to a federal detention facility where I would face 929 months for my history. I'm not an underachiever when it comes to anything. And breaking the laws was certainly not an exception. And so at this time, I'm by myself. I don't have anybody to call. I've burned all my bridges. I don't even know. My world has become so small. Literally, it's the size of this table. And everything that I had, I was in an 8x12. And when they would let you, this was, in the beginning, I'm locked up 23 hours, 50 minutes a day. They would allow a 10-minute call But I had nobody to call. I would just get out because I needed to get out, and sat there. And then that man came to a jail. And I don't remember anything that this man said in these meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't remember a thing. I wish I could tell you differently, but I remember this, that at the end of the meeting, he left, he got on the elevator and he went down to his car or whatever and went home to his family. And I went back to my world, which was again in an 8x12. And so I immediately wanted what he had. Well, it was attraction, he wasn't promoting this, but it was very attractive. And so I kept coming, and there was always a seat there, there was never any judging, and nobody ever there was no qualifying. I ended up, and obviously, I'm here today, I'm not on the run, so don't panic. I was given a tremendous amount of grace, and my parents, who had no reason whatsoever to extend even a hand or a 10-minute phone call, decided to take out a second mortgage on their house and get a lawyer who had his day in court, and instead of a best case of habitual felon with a 7 to 11, I get two 10 to 12 months back to back. So I'm only doing 20 to 24 months. Which is a whole lot better than what was originally thrown. And I'm 23 years old now, and I'm heading to maximum security to process. Not a really fun place to be. Probably some of the scariest days in my early sobriety were moving from facility to facility, because you have to. You have a whole new you have to get the lay of the land and figure out the rules and who's who, and everybody's, it's not a safe place. It's a really dark place. After processing in Max, I was classified in medium, which is a little better. Not as much hostility. And they tell me, you have to go to work or go to school. And I said, well, I need to work, because in my mind, that's just what you do. And they said, nope, you can't go to work. I was like, well, why'd you ask me? This is. And they said, all right, well, what class do you want to take? And they said, you have like a home ec class for cooking, and a horticulture class, and some other carpentry or something, or not carpentry, plumbing, for example. And I said, well, I'd like the cooking class, because I'm hungry by this point. I'm like about, like about 30 days dry. I'm ready to eat. Sorry, that class is full. Why'd you offer it? This is... You must have dealt with the similar... and so, okay, whatever. I've had some experience with closet tomatoes, so let me take the horticulture class. I'm sure I'll teach them something. And so, that's what I took. And it was in that class, I met my first sponsor, and Terry. And I also witnessed something, that was way beyond my comprehension. And it was how we can plant a little seed into the ground, into nice soil, and put some water on it, give it exposure to light. But then there is something that is beyond my understanding and beyond me, my power, that takes it from a seed to a little seedling, and then on to a bush or a tree. And that was my beginning with God, as we understand God, in this beautiful way, because there's nothing that I can do to take it out any faster or any slower than it's supposed to be. And Terry and I, we would sit out on the yard every Sunday, and he would read this book to me. And I would tell, hey, Terry, I can read, if you want me to ever, And he's like, Matt, you need to take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. And you just do it so politely, and sometimes with a few explicits. But I really needed this, because here I am. I'm beaten to submission, notably, but I'm still coming to class with all the answers. How am I ever going to learn anything? How am I going to pick up the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a textbook, if I already know how to live? I don't know how to live. Obviously, look at where I'm living right now. The state's having to manage my life for me. And I go and I have to swallow, some pride sometimes with talking with Terry, because he's one day, I'm on fire. I'm like 6 months in, right? I'm like, ready to carry the message to third world countries and save them of their alcoholism. And I found something somewhere, and I run over to Terry's building, and I call him, and this is like there's a football game on, I'm sure, and Terry is like, Matt, you know what? I got to tell you something. There's a life outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I suggest you find it. It's like, whoa, wait a second. And that's all he said, but in my mind, I'm still having this conversation, and what he said was very profound. I take AA into everything I do, but AA is not my life. I didn't get sober to live in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so it challenged me to start thinking, but at the same time, I'm still relatively new, still going through the work with Terry, and I really wanted my own book because I was having to borrow one from our group, and I wanted to be able to underline things, like make notes and stuff, and I didn't have one. And Terry said, well, Matt, there's an address in the back of the book. You could write them and see if you get any response. And I said, well, I don't really have much else to do. Might as well give it a try. Get used to writing a lot of letters. And I still get excited when the mail comes, unless it's a bill. And so I wrote a letter. A couple weeks passed. I forget about the letter. Get called to the mailroom. And there's a package there. And inside the package, there's a letter, a personal letter, and it says, "Dear Matt, it sounds like you've paid a high price for your drinking. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's a book and some pamphlets. I hope that they find you well and that we meet you soon." And I'm going to tell you, for the first time, I felt like I was really a part of this thing. And my world got so much bigger that day. And she signed her name, Gail or whatever. Alcoholic. One alcoholic reaching out to another. And it would be later, in several years later, that I realized what just happened there. And it was a beautiful, beautiful expression of love in the seventh tradition, because there was a group somewhere that put $1 in that basket, and they sent that $1 up to GSO, and GSO was able to give a book to a guy like me whose world was so dark and cold that only a little bit of light could get in, and it got in through Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have that letter still. I keep it. It's in a safe place. And so I'd continue on, and Terry and I got through the first 8 steps, and then it was time for me. I had to go to another facility, and he had already knew. We knew that I was moving, and he had already talked. I don't know how, but we got people everywhere. AA is everywhere, and so I already had a sponsor lined up by the time I got off the bus. It was impressive. And I get this guy, and his name's Juan, and Juan's we go back through the work and just kind of cover what Terry and I had went over, and when it got time to review my 8-step list, which already had the people who I had harmed, and we had went through it and said now, later, never. This is the time in which I should make these amends. Juan said, now means now. You need to get a piece of paper and a pencil and start writing. See, up to this point, I thought now means when I get released, when I go home. And Juan said, no, this means now. And so he showed me in the book exactly what my amends should look like. That this isn't I'm sorry, boo-hoo type of thing. This is what I did that was wrong. I need to know what I can do right now at this moment to make it right. My life depends on it. And it did. And so I took his suggestions and I began to write letters. I started top of my list, which was my mom. She wasn't going to come to prison to visit me. And that was perfectly understandable. So I wrote her a letter, and a couple days pass, and I receive a response, and she says that, and I've done everything besides physically put my hands on my mom. I can't even, when she sleeps better at night when her son's in jail or in prison, I have no idea what that's like, and that scares me from even having kids, to be honest with you, but that's another story. I get this response from her after asking her what I can do to make this right, that says, the only thing that we want from you is to start loving yourself like we've loved you this whole time. Yeah. And about 9 months sober, you see a grown man crying, like snot coming out the nose and everything. It just hit me. And it's not a really cool thing to do when you're in prison, by the way. But I don't care. I can't help it. This is like you guys have tapped in, and there's something that's starting to happen inside my life that is bigger than me. And I've also seen that that's my relationship with God today, is that this power is not asking of me more than simply that I try to love myself as much as that power loves me. And that's beyond my comprehension, so I don't need to try. I can just act, And fast forward a week, and I'm walking, business as usual, and then I'm go out onto the yard, and I'm standing at the top of this little hill, looking out as I normally would, and all of a sudden I don't see any gun towers. I don't see any Constantine wire. As a matter of fact, there's nobody else is even out on the yard. It startled me for a moment. And I'm standing there, and I feel this incredible warmth come over me, almost like when I was 12, from my head down all the way through my body, and I realize that I'm standing inside of a medium security prison, a free man. I would also realize that I was doing time well before I was locked up. And I think that none of us have to go to prison. It's not a requirement. It's a great place to get sober, but I'm not going to recommend you going. Take it, my experience. But what a gift. And I don't know how to recreate that. These are the steps we took. And I walked through the remaining steps with the sponsor, and things started to happen. For example, one day I was expecting some money to be put on my books from home, and that's pretty nice, right? And by this time, we were starting to have a good relationship. They saw that something was changing inside of me, and the mail clerk didn't, understand that I really needed that money, and they forgot to capitalize this letter and this letter. It was something really petty, and I went up to the mailroom because I didn't have my money when I was expecting it, and I let the mail lady know what I thought about this. And stormed out of there, I showed you. But then I got back to my pod, and there was something that came over me, that wasn't your best. And then I remember these old guys telling me, if you have to eat crow, it's better to eat it when it's warm. And and that's kind of like my 10th step, that I have to get it done right now, and promptly. And so I promptly took my tail up there and startled her at first, because I think she thought I was going to, do something crazy, like out and back, she got in a pose ready to knock me out, and I was like, hey, wait, I was wrong. That was I could have handled myself a lot better. I apologize, and that shocked her too. That doesn't happen, and it did, thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm starting to live the 10th step before I'm even formally going through it with the sponsor. And I had the opportunity to work with other guys too, and sponsor other guys while still in prison. And it was so cool to hear about the news with the San Quentin, and that the men are going to be allowed to have one-on-one. That was really cool in the H&I meeting before before this, and it was really awesome. And when I got home, I got my last camp that I was at. It was a minimum security. I went there for 2 months, just at the end of my term, and they had you guys are everywhere. I'm telling you. At least I was fortunate, and you were at the facilities I were at, and a guy named Bob came to this facility, and Bob was interesting. He said that he came to prison so he didn't have to go to prison. I'm like, interesting. Like, that doesn't make any sense, Bob. Do you realize that, right? And he's like, yeah, it's okay. And it makes perfect sense to me today, and I get it. And Bob and I went back through the work, and we were able to, given the security of that facility, like actually have one-on-one time, and we went back through, and I did an inventory, and which I had done in the past with sponsors. But I told Terry, I was like, look, there's going to be something I'm not telling you here because I'm not trying to stay here for that much longer, and I love you, but I don't trust you 120%. And he understood that. But I got through this, and it's getting ready to go home. I'm getting ready to come up for my release date, and Bob says that he knew a guy, that knew a guy in Tennessee, and I was just thrilled because they have AA in Tennessee. At this time, my dad had taken a new job in Tennessee. So my mom and him had moved to Tennessee, and that was my home plan. He had also been diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer and was given 18 months to live, and that was at the beginning of my time. So meanwhile, he's going through this. But I was given the tremendous grace to be able to have time with him. He came to the prison, and I was able to do my amends just in the event. And he, like my mom, gave me full, just was full absolution. You're doing what's right, and didn't ask for a dime back. And I find out that there's a guy, Bob knows a guy that knows a guy. So I get this, I'm thinking that, all right, A is like the mob, all right? Like, you guys got people everywhere, and Paulie's going to meet me at the bus stop, and we're going to get to work. And so, like, I'm ready, though. Let's do it. I mean, like, this is my life on the line. And Paulie ended up being Scott. His name's Scott, and Scott is my sponsor today, actually, and it's kind of beautiful the way that that's all worked out. Not in my time, because I wanted him as a sponsor right there, but he wasn't, it just didn't work that way. But he is today, and he's just such a beautiful man. He's taught me so much, and I'm still very close with Bob and in North Carolina. And Bob was kind of still like my temporary sponsor when I moved to Tennessee, and I had a lot of questions, like, well, what am I supposed to do now? And still pretty afraid. And I'll be honest. I mean, I'm just about to be 2 years sober at the time, and was ready to do, what do I need to do? Let's get to work. I mean, there's no doubt that starting this way of life inside of prison is tremendously set me in a better place to get to work once I hit the ground. That's all I wanted to do when I got home. I wanted to get to a meeting that day. I didn't care about the steak, about getting laid, about, big beds with cushy pillows. Yeah, all of that stuff would come. But I needed to get to a meeting. That was primary goal numero uno. And I was so culture shocked when I went into my first meeting. Like, and I had like one of these stutters and stuff. And, just to be able to like go to the bathroom when I wanted, or going in and out of the meeting, it was just freaking me out. And but I showed up, and you guys welcomed me. And I came to a group right down the road from where my parents were living. It's a noon meeting in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and I showed up, and I said, my name's Matt, I'm an alcoholic, and I just got out of prison. And they were welcoming me. I thought they were going to kick me out, but you guys said, welcome, we're glad you're here. And I knew it was in the right place. And Bob was really big on service. He carried a meeting to that prison for 20 plus years. He said I needed to get involved in service. I was like, how do I do that? He's like, look around, find an old timer, ask him how to get involved in service. I was like, yes, sir. And I go and I find this guy, Detroit Dave. And Detroit, he's, kind of a, biker guy, that type of, he'd been around for a while. So I said, hey, Dave, I need to get involved in service. And he kind of looked twice at me. And he said, hey, talking to his friend, you hear what he said? He wants to get involved in service. He starts laughing, like that old-timer laugh, like, I'm like, Dave, I don't know what's so funny here. My life's on the line. And he's like, okay, you want to get involved in service? Come to the business meeting on Thursday. He wants to get involved in service. I was at the business meeting early, and I left the business meeting the GSR of that group. Had no idea what a GSR was, but I think they sensed my enthusiasm and were not going to let it go to waste. I'm so thankful for that. Because when I moved to Tennessee, I knew my mom and my dad, and that was it, and Paulie, right? And that was it. After my first assembly, I had family from Knoxville to Memphis, the whole state. And I show up at a corrections meeting in Tennessee and North Carolina. We don't have H&I. We have it separated into treatment and corrections. I have experience with both facilities and love them both, but they just haven't figured out how to mesh them yet. I'll bring that back, actually, from this conference and suggest that we fix it. It was a joke. Yeah. But anyways, I show up at the corrections meeting and I say, my name's Matt. I just got out of prison, and I'd love to give back what was freely given to me. And they said, well, that's great. We're really glad you're here. And although we may not be able to get you into the prison right away, most people aren't crazy like that. They want to go back immediately. And there's work for you to do. And I was like, that's awesome, thanks. And so I got to meet some of these people inside of the corrections community, and inside of Nashville and the greater Nashville area in the state. And meanwhile, my PO was like, there's no way that you're going to be able to take meetings inside a prison. That was a bad first idea that I had. I'd like to get back into the prison. She's like, no, I don't think so. She didn't know how to respond. And as a result of going to this area assembly meeting, within a couple months, I was taking a weekly meeting into the county jail, and held that commitment for 2.5 to 3 years. That next assembly I went to, these two people trapped me. They were on the chairs and secretary or something like that. They trapped me. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but they said, would you be interested in being a treasurer? And I was like, well, wait a second, guys. That's cute, but do you know who I am? Do you remember when I first came here, I told you where I just come from? And they're like, yeah, they must have been really desperate. I don't know, but the truth of the matter is they knew exactly who I was. And they knew that if I didn't get in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, that I would die. And so I said yes, and I became the state corrections treasurer for the next 2.5 years, 3 years. And I had a checkbook. I never had a checkbook before. I'd done a lot of things with checks, but I never actually had my own checkbook. And that's my experience. And they were okay with that. So I basically learned how to. This should make you feel comfortable. I learned how to balance a checkbook with the state's money for corrections. And I'm going to tell you what, though, there was not a dime missing from that budget, because I knew that if there was, they'd be coming right for me. And so it was a great experience. And before that, though, my dad's health was not doing really well at all, and it was getting close. I saw this strong man my whole life. He had started to change, and he was no longer able to even get up from the chair and go to the bathroom by himself. He had to have help, and I was really, really sad. But I was given this tremendous gift of being able to be present for that, to be able to stay in the hospital with him, sleep overnight, and while at the same time, I started my first semester back at community college, because after that horticulture class, I thought, maybe I can do this school thing, and I didn't have to work immediately, and I could stay at home, and I was like, well, I'll try taking a couple classes. Well, during this first semester, my dad's health declines, and I didn't think he was going to make it to my sobriety date. So I asked my home group if I could have a 1-year medallion, which I'd already celebrated. And of course, they gave it to me, and I was able to sit. I was on the couch one night with my dad, and I said, "Hey, Pops, I wanted to give this to you." And he looked at it, and he realized what it was, and you would have thought I handed the man a 50-carat diamond. And he didn't know any one of you that I know of, but I'll tell you what, he loved each and every one of you, because you gave him his son back. And I didn't know how to do that kind of stuff. You know what? He passed shortly thereafter. And I'm so thankful that I was able to be there, present, and not in the next state trying to make the pain go away. And I was able to be there for my mom and my sister. And I continued to do these little things, like show up early and stay late. And if you do that long enough and you do the work, just like here in AA, you get good grades in school too. I didn't know this. And so I kept pushing forward. That's what you guys showed me to do. I leaned on you. And I'm at the hospital. My dad's dying, but there's this newcomer that's got a big problem, so I'm listening to him. And all of a sudden, my problems go away. How does that work? And I continue to take the suggestions that have been given to me and through this text, and I say, I get, 2 years down the road, and they haven't kicked me out of school yet. Actually, they'll kick you out with a degree if you just keep going. And it's like, well, this is great. And so I did that, and I'd actually thought about going to this one particular business school for entrepreneurship, and I'd called up there. I was like, hey, do you accept community college people? And they're like, yeah, all the time. And I was like, okay. And so I sent up a flag, it's like, okay, whatever, let's see. I'll probably get rejected. But actually I got approved. And so I went to this business school and for 2 years in Nashville and studied. And I at the end of this, of just getting out of a 3-year relationship with another lady in AA who was married when we first started jiving. And my sponsor did not agree that I should enter into this relationship, but I went because I knew what was best for me, and and this relationship should have never been in the first place, but I was holding on to it and just trying to make it work. I really, really loved her, and it ran on fear. And when that finally was ripped out of my life with claw marks, I'm 6 years sober, or just about to be 6 years sober, and I don't want drink, but I really don't want to go on anymore. Like I was as close to as I hope I ever am, checking myself in voluntarily for my own safety. It was a really dark time, and I'd realized that through those last 3 years that I placed my dependence on her and not on God. And that house was just destined to crumble. The best thing that could have happened was that it didn't work out when it did, because who knows how big that house would have been if we'd have kept with it. But, this was a really dark period of my life, and I just kept doing these stupid suggestions and, like, suiting up and showing up and going to these meetings and taking meetings to, the hospitals or the prison. And my last, like, literally it was just like one foot in front of the other. And I went to school one day. I was talking to my professor in international studies, and he said that we'd like to recommend you for this program in France to get your master's. And I was like, France, like Tennessee, France, or France? And he said Tennessee, not Tennessee, the one overseas. We have a sister school, and we'd like to give you a scholarship. So within 3 months from the time that I had my heart ripped out and stomped and all that stuff, I'm still grieving that, but now I get this opportunity to go study on a scholarship in France. Had I been in this relationship, I would have politely declined the opportunity, and I'll be happy to report to you that I said, okay, yes, that sounds like a plan. But of course, once they figure out who I am, the gates are going to close and on me, and I'm not going to be able to do anything. And one of my heroes, Tom I, who was really influential in the North Carolina Department of Corrections specifically, he used to say, when there's work for you to do, the gates will open. the guards hold the keys, but God opens and closes the gates. And he does the same thing with the borders too, because I went down to Atlanta and I filled out the paperwork. I did the little things, and God opened some big doors. And I'm on a plane going across the Atlantic Ocean to a country I don't speak the language to study in English, and had this amazing experience. And I found out that they have AA in France, and so in English, double bonus. And that's what I did. Just like when I went to a new facility in prison, I went to a new country and I found you guys. And I got plugged in immediately. I didn't wait until, after another baguette to get a home group, It's like, this is it. And just like all the great men in my life, I had a man who was going to be my home away from home sponsor, and we met on Saturdays. I had a 2-hour train ride. Every Saturday morning I woke up at 6, took a train, and I got to Paris where they spoke English, AA. And I had to go to my home group there at 10:30, beginners meeting in Paris. If you're there, stop in, tell them I said hello. And what's cool is that I was at a conference doing one of these things, and I said that, and somebody from that meeting was like, hey, do you know this guy? And he was there at the conference. It was from Paris to, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And here I am, I'm walking in downtown. I get off the train in Paris, and I walk to my home group, and one morning it hit me, and I just started to cry, because how does a man go from a little world about the size of a 10 by 12 table to walk in the world a free man? It's a long way from there to there. But it's Alcoholics Anonymous. It's taking these steps, not knowing where we're going, but trusting that the people who have gone before me know a little bit more than I do. And with just that little bit of faith and a lot of courage, I kept moving forward. And I had a great time. I went to meetings as much as I could in different countries and traveled, and it was really just a very humbling experience to be able to go. And I get to I was working overseas for a little bit, but then I wanted to come home because this is where my family is, this is where my heart is, and I'm still kind of just excited to see what's next. And I come home and I have this girl who I had met a while back, and she was a victim. I broke her heart. Let me say that. I don't know how to say it, but. Because I told her I'm leaving for France, I don't want this to be a long-term thing. This is going to be a couple weeks. Sorry, and she agreed on the front end. But then when I left, it was quite sad. And I sent her a text message when I was home on Christmas. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm back. I'm sorry, what I did was wrong. And she said nothing, and maybe one thanks or something like that, but nothing like I was expecting. And then. Fast forward a year or two, and I was back in Nashville, and I was like, I wonder how she's doing. I sent her a text message, hey, how's it going? She's like, it's great, thanks. Who is this? And I'm like, it's Matt, you remember me? And so if she hadn't deleted my number, maybe I wouldn't have had a second chance. But my God I have today in my life is full of second chances, and He gave me one. I had asked for dinner. She said, no way, maybe lunch. And so I said, okay, we'll do it. And I just came back from Italy, so I had some fresh ingredients, and I knew I had to bring my A game. And I did. We had dinner that night, and she wouldn't even let me so much as peck her on the cheek for the first 30 days. It seemed like an eternity. And had she I don't know if we'd be married today for the last 2 years. I thank her for letting me go this weekend, and we'll tell her she got a clapping. No, but she's awesome, and this is stuff that I didn't go out and look for. My plans generally suck, okay? And I'm just going to be honest. The stuff that we go back and look at my life, my plans and the outcomes are far, far, far worse than than the other. And I'm continuing to learn new things. One quick thing, I'm getting close to my time here, but one lesson that I learned in the last year, I don't know as much as I think I know. And I'm often wrong. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? It's like, and I have to reread this book each time, and sometimes, this is a third edition because I like one of the stories in it, and I like to carry it because it makes me look established, but sometimes I read this book and it's like this is a whole new edition. You know, I don't even know where this is coming from. But one of the lessons I learned recently is this is a small thing, and I haven't shared it with this many people. But you know, when I'm doing my work at home, my wife comes home. She's a nurse at Vanderbilt, which is a level 1 trauma hospital, the only one in the city. So she sees probably more carnage in one day than I've seen in my whole lifetime. And she's always really excited to see me, all right, when she comes home. And I'm working still, so I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm here. You know, and I've actually made fun of her before. I'm not proud to say that, but like about how excited she is to see me. And because I'm not used to that, right? And we were talking one night after dinner, and she told me, you know, how she thinks about death a lot. We were talking. One of our good friends is not doing well and close to death. She told me, you know what, I think about death a lot, and what I'm most afraid of is that you're going to get, you know, air flighted in here from dropping me off at work, and it hit me right there when she was saying that when she's so excited to see me because this is an answer to her prayer that she's had all day, and here I am just saying, oh, you know, well, I'll be down in a little bit. Wow, just like that. And I think that I was able to see that little bit of truth about the situation a little bit differently as a result of practicing these steps and practicing the life that we have here. And I talked to my sponsor about it. I was like choked up trying to drive and talk at the same time. It's dangerous. And he's like, I suggest that you make 5 minutes and stop whatever you're doing. And I think when she comes home and you greet her, and that's what I do from now on. I mean, these little things, but they're a game changer. I don't want to get to the end of the road and get to the other side and see, you know, I was wrong about everything. I mean, I'd like to at least, you know, be up on the count. I mean, but the thing that I'd like to leave on, I guess, and there's a lot, but it's this idea here we have on page 100, and it's talking about our 12th step and this journey that we get to walk on, and we're not walking alone. And it talks about, you know, you and the new man. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this recording. If you are interested in other speaker tapes or CDs from AA or Al-Anon, please contact us at Sound Solutions, toll free 1-877-893-2777, or visit us on the web at soundsolutionsrecording.com. We are also available to cover your recording and sound system needs. Thank you for allowing us to be of service and carrying the message.